The stars above Earth flickered and died. One by one, they vanished from the night sky as enormous ships blocked their light. 3,000 alien warships emerged from the darkness of space, each one larger than any city humanity had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, surrounding the planet like predators circling wounded prey. Inside the lead vessel, Admiral Vorn stood before a massive window overlooking Earth. His 3 eyes studied the blue planet with mild interest. In his 300 years of service to the Galactic Coalition, he had seen this scene dozens of times. A primitive world unaware of the greater universe, about to learn its place in the cosmic order. He turned to his second officer, a thin creature with silver skin and too many fingers. "Broadcast the message," Vorn said. His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Standard terms. They have 72 hours. Across Earth, every screen, every phone, every device capable of receiving a signal suddenly activated." The message came in all languages simultaneously. The voice was emotionless, mechanical, final. "People of Earth, you have been selected for integration into the Galactic Coalition. You will surrender all weapons, all governments, and all authority to Coalition command. You have 72 hours to comply. Resistance will result in complete extinction. This is your only warning." The message repeated 3 times, then the screens went dark. In a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Commander Hyunwoo watched the broadcast with steady eyes. Around him, military leaders from every nation on Earth waited for his response. The room was silent except for the hum of computers and the quiet breathing of terrified men and women who suddenly realized how small their world truly was. "How many ships?" Hyunwoo asked. 3,000, sir," a young officer replied. "Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a continent. Our satellites show they're positioning themselves in optimal attack formations. If they fire, we have maybe 10 minutes before total atmospheric collapse." Hyunwoo nodded slowly. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from a lifetime of service. He had fought in wars, survived impossible situations, and never once showed fear to his soldiers. He did not show it now. "Get me Dr. Minji," he said quietly, "and send a message to President Ji-won. Tell her it's time." 30 minutes later, Dr. Minji entered the command center. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and hands that never stopped moving. She carried a datapad covered in equations that would have looked like nonsense to anyone else. Behind her, 2 soldiers wheeled in a large case marked with symbols that meant nothing to the other officers in the room. "Is it ready?" Hyunwoo asked. Minji smiled. It was not a happy smile. "We've had 50 years to prepare for this exact moment. Every calculation checked and rechecked 1,000 times. Every component tested until we were absolutely certain." "Yes, Commander. It's ready." President Ji-won appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but determined. "The Coalition has sent negotiators to the surface. They want to meet in Geneva in 12 hours. They're calling it a peaceful integration discussion. Will you meet with them?" Hyunwoo asked. "Of course," Ji-won said. "We need to buy time. Let them think we're considering surrender. Let them think we're afraid." "We are afraid," one of the generals muttered. Ji-won's eyes hardened. "Afraid, yes, but not helpless. Humanity did not crawl out of caves and survive ice ages and plagues and wars just to bow to the first aliens who demanded. We've been preparing for this. Now we find out if our preparation was enough." High above Earth, Admiral Vorn received reports that the humans had agreed to negotiations. He was pleased but not surprised. Every species chose survival over pride. The humans would posture and bargain, but in the end they would surrender. They always did. "Tactician Relith," Vorn called to his second officer. "Prepare landing forces. Once the negotiations conclude, we'll need boots on the ground to secure their military installations." Relith's silver fingers danced across a control panel. "Admiral, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's surface. Multiple locations. The patterns don't match anything in our database of primitive technology." Vorn barely glanced at the readings. Probably their power grids going haywire from panic. These primitives always have some kind of reaction when they realize they're not alone. Ignore it and focus on the landing coordinates. But Relith was not convinced. Something about the energy patterns bothered him. They were too organized, too deliberate. He flagged the readings for later analysis and returned to his duties. On Earth, the 72 hours passed slowly. The Coalition negotiators arrived in Geneva, tall beings in silver armor who spoke through translators and made demands that sounded like generous offers. President Ji-won sat across from them, nodding and asking questions, playing the role of a desperate leader trying to save her people. Meanwhile, Commander Hyunwoo gave quiet orders. All around the world, hidden bases came online. Soldiers who had trained for decades in absolute secrecy moved into position. Dr. Minji and her team of scientists made final adjustments to equipment that no one outside their classified project even knew existed. Engineer Soo-hyun stood in a facility carved into the side of a mountain in South Korea. Before him, a massive machine hummed with power that seemed to make the air itself vibrate. It had taken 30 years to build this device, using principles that humanity had discovered by accident and perfected through desperation. All systems are green, Soo-hyun reported into his comm link. The resonance array is ready for activation on your command. Across the planet, similar facilities reported the same message. Hidden in mountains, buried in deserts, concealed beneath cities, humanity's true defense network waited in silence. The 72-hour deadline arrived. Admiral Vorn stood on his command deck, watching as Earth's major cities began to power down. Lights dimmed. Communications went quiet. It looked exactly like a planet surrendering to the inevitable. "They're complying," Vorn announced to his fleet. "Prepare for landing operations. All forces begin descent." Thousands of coalition soldiers boarded transport ships. The first wave would secure strategic locations, while the second wave would begin the process of cataloging Earth's resources and population. It was routine, efficient, and had worked on every world the coalition had ever integrated. The transports left the safety of the warships and began their descent toward Earth. That was when Commander Hyunwoo spoke 3 words that changed galactic history. Activate dead zones. All around the world, the machines came alive. The resonance array, built into Earth's tectonic structure itself, began broadcasting a frequency that existed between dimensions. The Coalition's sensors couldn't detect it, because they didn't know such frequencies were possible. The Coalition transports simply vanished. One moment they were descending through Earth's atmosphere. The next moment they were gone, scattered across dimensional space like dust in the wind. 3,000 soldiers disappeared in an instant. On the warships, alarms screamed. Sensors went dark. Communication systems failed. Admiral Vorn stared at his displays in confusion, as his fleet suddenly found itself blind and deaf. "What just happened?" he demanded. "Where are our forces?" No one could answer him. The ship's instruments showed nothing but static and impossible readings. It was as if reality itself had stopped making sense. Then from Earth's surface, something else activated. Something that shouldn't exist according to everything the Coalition knew about physics and technology. In orbit, hidden platforms that had been mistaken for primitive satellites began to glow with blue light. On the Moon, facilities buried beneath lunar dust came online after decades of patient waiting. And in the asteroid belt, weapons that humanity had built from ancient technology older than their own civilization began to move. Admiral Vorn finally understood that he had made a terrible mistake. Earth was not a primitive world. It was a trap, and he had just led his entire fleet into it. 50 years earlier, scientist Daiho had been conducting a routine survey of the Moon's far side when his instruments detected something impossible. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in a crater that had been there for millions of years, something was generating heat. Not much, barely enough to register, but it was there. And it was artificial. Daiho reported his findings to Earth. Within a week, a secret excavation team arrived. What they found changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. The structure was enormous, buried under a kilometer of lunar rock. It had been there for at least 5 million years, maybe longer. The walls were made of material that Earth's best scientists couldn't identify. Inside, they found weapons, ships, and technology that operated on principles that shouldn't exist. More importantly, they found a warning. The ancient civilization that built this base had been fighting a war. The enemy they fought had come from beyond their star system, demanding surrender and integration. The ancient ones had refused. The weapons they created were their answer to extinction. But in the end, both civilizations had destroyed each other. Dr. Minji's predecessor had been the first to understand what this meant. Earth was not unique. The pattern had happened before. Aggressive civilizations expanding into space, demanding compliance from weaker worlds. And eventually, they would find Earth. The decision was made at the highest levels of every government. The discovery would remain secret. Humanity would study the ancient technology and prepare for the day when someone came knocking on their door with demands. It might be 100 years. It might be 1,000. But it would happen. For 50 years, the best minds on Earth worked in absolute secrecy. They reverse-engineered weapons that defied physics. They built ships using principles that shouldn't work, but somehow did. They created a defense network hidden in plain sight, disguised as satellites and research stations and communication hubs. Engineer Soo-hyun had spent 30 years of his life building the resonance array. The ancient technology had shown them how to manipulate quantum fields at a planetary scale. The array used Earth's own magnetic field as a weapon, broadcasting frequencies that could disrupt any technology based on conventional physics. It was Dr. Minji who perfected the dimensional displacement system. The ancient base had contained ships that could slip between dimensions existing in multiple realities at once. Humanity couldn't replicate it completely, but they learned enough. Enough to create zones where matter simply ceased to exist in normal space. Enough to make an invading force disappear. Captain Yoonji had been 15 when the lunar base was discovered. She grew up knowing that Earth was preparing for war. She joined the military at 18 and spent the next 20 years training in secret facilities, learning to pilot ships that officially didn't exist, mastering weapons that no enemy knew about. Now she stood on the bridge of the EDS Indomitable, one of 50 warships humanity had built in hidden shipyards on the dark side of the moon. The ship was small compared to the coalition vessels, but it carried technology that made size irrelevant. "Captain, we have our orders," her first officer reported. "We're cleared for Operation Shadow Strike." Yoonji nodded. "Activate dimensional drives. All ships, prepare for jump." Around her, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. These men and women had trained for this moment their entire careers. They had families on Earth, children who didn't know their parents were about to fight a battle in space. They had everything to lose, and nowhere to retreat. The dimensional drive activated. Reality bent around the Indomitable. For a brief moment, the ship existed in two places at once. Then it slipped through the fabric of space itself. Admiral Vorn was still trying to understand what had happened to his landing forces when his sensors screamed a warning. 50 ships appeared inside his formation, materializing out of nothing. They were small, barely larger than coalition fighters, but their weapons lit up before his gunners could even target them. The Indomitable fired its main weapon. The particle beam punched through a coalition warship's shields like they weren't there, cutting the vessel in half. Around them, the other Earth ships did the same. The coalition's famous shields, which had never failed against any known weapon, collapsed under weapons that operated on completely different principles. Vorn watched in horror as 300 of his ships died in the first 60 seconds of combat. The human vessels moved impossibly fast, jumping in and out of dimensional space, firing and vanishing before his weapons could lock on. "Return fire," he screamed. "All ships, weapons free." The coalition fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missiles and weapons that could crack planets filled the space around Earth. Some of the shots connected. 6 human ships exploded, their crews dying instantly in the cold of space. But for every human ship destroyed, 10 coalition vessels fell. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it ended, 300 coalition warships were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet vanished back into dimensional space, leaving Vorn staring at the wreckage of his formation. "Retreat," he whispered. The word tasted like poison. "All ships, retreat to outer system. Regroup at Jupiter." For the first time in coalition history, a fleet retreated from a primitive world. The humans had not just fought back. They had won. On Earth, Commander Hyunwoo watched the battle reports with grim satisfaction. They had surprised the enemy, bloodied them, but he knew this was just the beginning. The coalition would regroup. They would analyze what happened. And they would return with a larger fleet. "Casualties?" he asked. 6 ships lost, an officer reported. 300 crew dead, but we inflicted losses at a 50-to-1 ratio. Hyunwoo closed his eyes. 300 families would receive news that would break their hearts. 300 people who had trained in secret, who had devoted their lives to defending Earth, were gone. Their names would never be known publicly. Their sacrifice would be classified for decades. They died protecting their home, Hyun-woo said quietly. Make sure their families know that. Make sure they understand that those 300 bought us time. Dr. Minji entered the command center. She looked exhausted. The resonance array performed perfectly. We scattered their landing forces across 7 dimensions. They won't be recovered, ever. Can we do it again? Hyun-woo asked. The array needs 48 hours to recharge. After that, yes. But Commander, they know about us now. They'll adapt. They'll come up with countermeasures. We can't rely on surprise twice. Hyun-woo nodded. Then we move to Phase 2. Soo-hyun, is the asteroid grid ready? Engineer Soo-hyun appeared on a screen. Behind him, massive rocks floated in space, each one equipped with gravitational manipulation technology. Ready, sir. We've positioned 60 asteroids along calculated trajectories. Give the word, and we can accelerate them to 0.9 light speed. The kinetic energy alone will be devastating. Hold for now, Hyun-woo ordered. We need to see what they do next. At Jupiter, Admiral Vorn stared at the data his ships had collected during the brief battle. The human weapons operated on principles his scientists couldn't explain. The dimensional jumping technology shouldn't exist. The shield-penetrating beams violated fundamental laws of physics. His communication officer interrupted his thoughts. Admiral, urgent message from Coalition High Command. The Emperors are demanding a full report. Vorn knew his career was over, possibly his life. The Coalition did not forgive failure, especially failure against a species that was supposed to be helpless. Send them everything, he said. All combat data, all sensor readings. Tell them the truth. Tell them that humanity is not primitive. They've been preparing for us, and their technology is beyond anything we've encountered. The message traveled faster than light, reaching Coalition space in days. When the 12 Emperors read Vorn's report, there was silence in their council chambers. Then Emperor Thax of the Telixian Empire stood and spoke words that would doom thousands more. Mobilize the Grand Fleet. Every empire commits its full military strength. We will crush this human world and make an example of them. No primitive species will ever dare resist us again. On Earth, Agent Tae-woo sat in a cantina on the Coalition border world of Talvos Prime. He had been living undercover for 3 years, posing as a trader from a minor species. Around him, aliens of a dozen races talked about the news spreading through Coalition space. Earth had fought back. Earth had won a battle against the great Admiral Vorn. The story was spreading like fire, changing with each telling, but the core truth remained. Humanity had refused to surrender. Tae-woo sipped his drink and listened. These aliens feared the Coalition. They obeyed because they had no choice. But now, for the first time, they wondered. If humanity could resist, maybe others could too. He activated his hidden communicator and sent a coded message to Earth. The Grand Fleet is mobilizing. Estimate 15,000 warships. They'll arrive in 3 weeks. Commander Hyun-woo received the message and shared it with his command staff. The room was silent as they processed the number. 15,000 ships. More firepower than humanity had ever faced. President Ji-won spoke from her office. Can we win against those odds? Hyun-woo looked at Dr. Minji, at Soo-hyun, at Captain Yoonji, who had just returned from the battle. He saw determination in their eyes. Fear too, but determination stronger than fear. I don't know, he admitted, but we're going to try, because if we don't, our children will live as slaves. I'd rather die fighting than live on my knees. The 12 Emperors of the Galactic Coalition met in a chamber that existed outside normal space. Their physical bodies remained on their homeworlds, but their minds connected through quantum link technology, appearing as projections of light and power. Each represented an empire that had ruled for thousands of years. Together they had never been challenged until now. Emperor Thax spoke first. His form was massive, covered in scales that glowed with internal fire. Admiral Vorn has failed us. A pre-spaceflight civilization destroyed 300 of our warships. Explain this. The other emperors remained silent. None of them had an explanation that made sense. The humans should have been helpless. Every scout report from the past century had shown them as primitive, barely capable of reaching their own moon. fighting among themselves over resources and territory. Strategic coordinator Zenith materialized in the center of the chamber. Unlike the emperors, Zenith was not a ruler but a mind, an artificial intelligence created by the Coalition thousands of years ago to calculate military strategy. It had never been wrong. Analysis complete, Zenith announced. Its voice had no emotion, only certainty. Earth was never primitive. They detected our expansion decades ago and have been preparing specifically for contact with the Coalition. Every action, every decision was made with our eventual arrival in mind. Emperor Thax's scales brightened with rage. Impossible. Our scouts reported no advanced technology, no weapons platforms, no military capability beyond crude missiles and atmospheric craft. They deceived us, Zenith replied. The technology they demonstrated in battle does not originate from their civilization. Probability analysis suggests they discovered remnants of the old war and successfully reverse-engineered weapons from that era. Silence filled the quantum chamber. The old war was legend even among the ancient Coalition races. Two civilizations fighting with weapons that bent reality itself, destroying each other completely. The Coalition had built their empire in the ashes of that conflict, studying the ruins but never fully understanding the technology. If they possess old war technology, another emperor said slowly, then they are more dangerous than we calculated. Much more dangerous, Zenith confirmed. However, analysis shows they cannot have fully replicated the ancient weapons. Their defense network is impressive but limited. The Grand Fleet will have sufficient strength to overcome their capabilities. Probability of Coalition victory 73%. Emperor Thax did not like those odds. The Coalition had never accepted less than certain victory. But pride demanded action. Mobilize the Grand Fleet. All 12 empires commit their full military strength. We will crush Earth and scatter its people across the galaxy as slaves. No other world will dare resist us. The vote was unanimous. The Grand Fleet began to gather. On Earth, President Jiwan stood before a camera broadcasting to every device on the planet. She had not slept in 3 days. Her advisors told her she looked exhausted, but she didn't care. The people needed to hear from her. Citizens of Earth, she began. 3 days ago, the Galactic Coalition invaded our world. They demanded our surrender. We refused. Our brave soldiers fought back and won the first battle. But we must be honest about what comes next. The Coalition is mobilizing their full military might. 15,000 warships are coming to destroy us. She paused, letting the number sink in. In living rooms and offices around the world, people stopped what they were doing to listen. For 50 years, we have prepared for this moment. We kept the preparation secret because we needed the element of surprise. Now you know the truth. Humanity has been building weapons, training soldiers, and creating defenses for a war we knew was coming. We are not helpless. We are not victims. We are fighters. Juan's eyes hardened. The Coalition believes we will surrender. They believe their superior numbers will break our spirit. They are wrong. We are the descendants of people who crossed oceans in wooden boats. We are the children of those who survived ice ages and plagues and countless wars. We are humanity, and we do not kneel. She leaned forward. To the Galactic Coalition, I say this. You came to our home to conquer us. You failed. Now I offer you one chance. Withdraw beyond Jupiter and never return. If you refuse, we will show you why humanity survived when so many others did not. This is our only offer. The broadcast ended. Around the world, people reacted in different ways. Some were terrified. Some were inspired. But all of them understood that everything was about to change. The Coalition's response came 6 hours later. Emperor Thax appeared on every screen, his scaled face filled with contempt. Humans, you have demonstrated interesting technology, but you are still children playing with weapons you do not understand. The Grand Fleet will arrive in 3 weeks. You will surrender or you will cease to exist. There will be no negotiation. The transmission ended. Earth had its answer. Far from Earth, on the Coalition trade world of Talvos Prime, Agent Taewoo sat in a crowded marketplace listening to aliens discuss the situation. The news of Earth's resistance had spread across Coalition space faster than anyone expected. Some species thought humans were brave. Others thought they were stupid. All of them were watching to see what would happen. Taewoo moved through the crowd, his appearance altered by advanced holographic technology to look like a minor trader species. He had been undercover for 3 years, building relationships, gathering intelligence, and waiting for his real mission to begin. That mission started now. He made his way to a secure location and activated his hidden communicator. The signal was quantum encrypted and bounced through a dozen relay stations before reaching Earth. "This is Agent Taewoo reporting. I've identified a critical weakness in Coalition infrastructure. They maintain unity through a synchronized quantum communication network called the Nexus. Every military vessel, every command station, every government facility is connected through this system. If we could disrupt it, their coordination would collapse." Commander Hyun-woo's voice came through the communicator. "Can we access it?" "Not remotely," Taewoo replied, "but I've located the primary hub. It's on a fortress station in the Talixian home system. Heavy security, but not impossible to infiltrate. Give me authorization and I'll get inside." There was a pause. Then Hyun-woo spoke. "Authorized. But Taewoo, if you're caught, we can't help you. You'll be on your own." "I understand, sir. For Earth." "For Earth," Hyun-woo echoed. Back on Earth, military preparations continued around the clock. Colonel Ji-hoon stood in a command center carved deep underground, coordinating the movement of forces across the planet. He was a thin man with steady hands and eyes that never stopped analyzing. "Commander," Ji-hoon said to Hyun-woo, "I've been reviewing our defensive capabilities. Even with all our technology, 15,000 ships is overwhelming. We need a strategy that doesn't rely on direct confrontation." "What do you suggest?" Hyun-woo asked. Ji-hoon pulled up a three-dimensional map of the solar system. "We heard them. Captain Yoonji's fleet conducts hit-and-run attacks, forcing the Coalition to maintain tight formation. Engineer Soo-yeon's asteroids create a constant kinetic bombardment, draining their shield reserves. We pull them into optimal range for the resonance array. Then we hit them with everything we have in one massive strike." "That only works if they follow our plan," Dr. Minji pointed out. She stood nearby reviewing calculations on her datapad. "If they split their forces or attack from multiple vectors, we're vulnerable." "They won't split up," Ji-hoon said with certainty. Coalition military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force in concentrated formations. It's worked for them for 3,000 years. They won't change tactics now. Hyun-woo studied the plan. It was risky, dependent on the enemy behaving predictably, but they had no choice. Meeting 15,000 warships in open battle was suicide. This was their only chance. "Approved," Hyun-woo decided. "Designated Operation Shattered Sky. Begin preparations." Engineer Soo-hyun received his orders and immediately began moving asteroids into position. Using gravitational manipulation technology, his teams shifted rocks the size of mountains into calculated trajectories. Each asteroid was equipped with stealth systems that made them nearly invisible to Coalition sensors. When the time came, they would accelerate these massive objects to nearly the speed of light and use them as kinetic weapons. The energy required to destroy an asteroid at that speed was enormous. But the energy didn't need to destroy them. It just needed to keep them invisible and on course. When they hit, the kinetic force alone would be equivalent to nuclear weapons. Captain Yoonji prepared her fleet for the most dangerous mission any of them would ever face. 50 ships against 15,000. Their job was to survive long enough to lure the enemy into position. Most of them would not return. She stood before her crew in the Indomitable's briefing room. 200 faces looked back at her, young and old, from every nation on Earth. "You know the mission," Yoonji said quietly. "We're bait. We draw them in and we survive as long as we can. Some of us won't make it home. Maybe none of us will. But if we succeed, Earth survives. Our families survive. That's what we're fighting for." A young pilot raised her hand. "Captain, are we going to win?" Yoonji looked at the young woman. She couldn't have been more than 22. "I don't know. But I know we're going to fight. And sometimes that's enough." 3 weeks passed. Earth used every hour to prepare. Soldiers said goodbye to families. Scientists made final adjustments to weapons. Politicians wrote speeches they hoped they would never have to give. Then, at the edge of the solar system, space itself began to ripple. The Grand Fleet had arrived. 15,000 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Admiral Vorn stood on his command deck, restored to command to redeem his earlier failure. He stared at Earth, that small blue world that had humiliated him. This time, there would be no retreat. This time, he would see humanity broken. "All ships," he announced. "Begin the advance. Maintain formation. Destroy anything that opposes us." The Grand Fleet moved toward Earth like an unstoppable tide. On Earth, alarms sounded in every military facility. Families huddled together, watching the sky. Soldiers took their positions. Commander Hyunwoo stood in his command center, surrounded by screens showing the approaching enemy. His hand rested on a button that would initiate Operation Shattered Sky. Everything humanity had built, everything they had prepared, came down to this moment. "All forces," he said quietly. "This is it. For Earth, for our families, for every generation that comes after us. Make them remember." The Grand Fleet crossed the outer edge of Earth's solar system like a wave of darkness. 15,000 warships moved in perfect formation, their weapons powered and ready. Admiral Vorn watched from his flagship's command deck as his tactical displays showed the vast emptiness ahead. No defenses, no resistance, just the cold void of space and, far in the distance, the small blue planet that had dared to defy the coalition. "Sensors detect no hostile forces," his tactical officer reported. "Space appears clear all the way to Mars orbit." Vorn nodded slowly. Something felt wrong. The humans had demonstrated advanced technology in the first battle, yet now they showed nothing. Were they hiding? Had they already given up? "Maintain combat readiness," he ordered. "They're planning something." He was right. 20 million kilometers ahead, hidden in the shadow of a large asteroid, Captain Yoonji sat in the Indomitable's command chair. Around her ship, 49 others waited in silence, their systems powered down to minimum levels to avoid detection. "Fleet reports ready," her first officer whispered. As if speaking loudly might give away their position, Yoonji checked her tactical display. The Grand Fleet was moving exactly as Colonel Jahoon predicted, maintaining their tight formation, advancing steadily toward Earth. They were arrogant, confident in their overwhelming numbers. That arrogance would cost them. "All ships," she transmitted on the quantum-encrypted channel. "Activate dimensional drives. Execute Plan Hornet. Hit them fast, jump out faster, and lead them to the kill zone." The 50 human ships activated their dimensional drives simultaneously, reality bent around them. For a heartbeat, they existed in two places at once. Then they appeared inside the Grand Fleet's formation, emerging from dimensional space in the gaps between coalition warships. Before the coalition could react, the human ships opened fire. Particle beams and antimatter torpedoes struck at point-blank range. Shields flared and failed. 20 coalition warships exploded in the first seconds of combat. Then, just as quickly, the human ships vanished, jumping back into dimensional space before return fire could connect. Vorn's flagship shook from the proximity explosions. "Report," he shouted. 20 ships destroyed, Admiral. The humans appeared inside our formation and jumped out before we could target them. They're using some kind of dimensional jump technology." Vorn's three eyes narrowed. Dimensional jumping required enormous energy and precise calculations. These humans shouldn't be capable of it. But they were, and they were using it to execute a strategy that was both brilliant and infuriating. All ships tighten formation. "Close the gaps. They can't jump into spaces that don't exist." The Grand Fleet compressed, ships moving closer together. The formation became denser, more compact, exactly what Yoonji wanted. She emerged 3 more times in the next hour, each time at a different location along the Grand Fleet's flanks. Hit, kill a few ships, vanish. The coalition couldn't effectively return fire because any missed shot might hit their own vessels in the tight formation. After the 4th attack, Vorn made a decision. All vessels pursuit formation. Fast attack wings break off and hunt those human ships. The rest of the fleet continues to Earth. That was when Engineer Soo-yeon triggered the second phase. Hidden throughout the asteroid belt, 60 massive rocks began to move. Gravitational manipulation systems pushed them to higher and higher speeds. Within minutes, they were traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, screaming through space toward the Grand Fleet. The coalition sensors detected them too late. The asteroids were small compared to warships and moving so fast that defensive systems had only seconds to respond. The first 3 asteroids struck shields that were already weakened from Yoonji's attacks. The kinetic energy was devastating. Shields collapsed completely. Ships that couldn't move out of the way fast enough were simply destroyed, cut in half by multi-million-ton rocks traveling at impossible speeds. More asteroids followed, then more. Soo-yeon had positioned them on staggered trajectories, creating a continuous bombardment that gave the coalition no time to recover. Ships scattered, trying to avoid the assault. breaking formation, creating chaos. Vorn watched his organized fleet dissolve into confusion. Reform, maintain formation. But it was too late. The humans had broken his careful organization and were now dictating the pace of battle. His ships were reacting instead of acting, and he knew, with cold certainty, that this had all been planned from the beginning. The Grand Fleet crossed Mars orbit still under attack from hit-and-run raids and kinetic bombardment. They had lost 700 ships, not a significant percentage of their total force, but far more than any coalition fleet had ever lost to a primitive world. And they hadn't even reached Earth yet. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, detecting massive energy readings from Earth, multiple locations across the planet's surface. "Power levels are off scale." Vorn stared at his display. Whatever the humans had prepared, it was about to activate. On Earth, Commander Yunwu stood in the command center watching as the Grand Fleet approached. They were exactly where he needed them to be, close enough that they couldn't escape quickly, spread out enough that the next attack would catch most of them. "Dr. Minji," he said quietly, "execute Operation Shattered Sky." Minji entered the command sequence. All across Earth, the resonance array came online. The ancient technology built into the planet's tectonic structure began broadcasting on frequencies that existed between dimensions. The signal spread outward at the speed of light, washing over the coalition fleet like an invisible wave. For 17 minutes, the Grand Fleet's technology simply stopped working. Shields collapsed. Weapons powered down. Communication systems went silent. Targeting computers showed nothing but error messages. 15,000 warships became 15,000 helpless targets, floating in space without protection or coordination. Vorn stood frozen in horror as every system on his ship failed. Emergency lights activated, bathing the command deck in red. His officers shouted questions he couldn't answer. Through the viewport, he could see other coalition ships drifting helplessly. Then Earth's real weapons opened fire. Hidden platforms on the moon, concealed in craters and buried under dust for decades, activated. Each platform contained weapons reverse-engineered from the ancient lunar base. Particle beam cannons that could punch through any known armor. Antimatter torpedo launchers that could destroy a ship with a single hit. Zero-point energy weapons that defied conventional physics. The platforms had clear lines of fire to the helpless coalition fleet. They began shooting methodically, efficiently, without mercy. In the asteroid belt, more weapons platforms activated. These were newer, built by human engineers using a combination of ancient technology and human innovation. They added their firepower to the massacre. Captain Yunji's fleet emerged from dimensional space one final time, appearing in the heart of the coalition formation. At this range, with shields down, every shot was lethal. The Indomitable's weapons fired continuously, its reactors pushed to maximum output. The Battle of Sol became a slaughter. Coalition ships that recovered faster than others tried to escape or fight back, but they were scattered and uncoordinated. Some attempted to retreat. Others pushed forward toward Earth in desperate attacks. None of it mattered. The human weapons kept firing. 7,000 coalition ships died in the first hour. Admiral Vorn's flagship regained partial power. He immediately tried to signal a retreat, but communications were still disrupted. Through his viewport, he watched his fleet die. Ships exploded silently in the void. Escape pods scattered in all directions, carrying survivors who would drift in space until rescue or death found them. He had led 15,000 ships to this battle. Maybe 2,000 would escape. "All ships," he transmitted on every available frequency, hoping someone could hear. "Retreat. Full retreat. Emergency jump to any safe coordinates." Some ships heard. Most didn't. But those that could began powering their faster-than-light drives, desperate to escape the killing zone. That was when Dr. Minji activated the final weapon. The temporal dislocation field was experimental, dangerous, and had only been tested once on a small scale. But Yunwu had authorized its use if necessary. It was necessary now. Hidden generators across Earth's surface synchronized and broadcast a different kind of frequency. This one affected time itself, creating microscopic fluctuations in localized temporal flow. Coalition ships caught in the field experienced different time rates. Some aged centuries in seconds, their hulls corroding and failing as hundreds of years passed for them while the universe moved normally. Others were frozen in temporal loops, trapped forever in single moments, their crews unaware that they would never move again. Vorn's flagship was partially caught in the field. Half the ship aged normally. The other half aged to dust in an instant. The vessel broke apart, spilling atmosphere and crew into space. Vorn found himself in an escape pod, watching his ship die around him. Through the pod's small window, he could see Earth in the distance, that blue world that had destroyed the greatest fleet ever assembled. The battle lasted 6 hours in total. When it ended, 14,800 coalition warships were destroyed, disabled or trapped in temporal loops. Only 200 ships escaped, badly damaged and carrying traumatized survivors who would never forget what they had seen. In Earth's command center, Hyunwoo watched the tactical display as the last enemy signals disappeared. The victory was complete, but the cost was visible in the tired faces around him. "Casualty report," he asked quietly. An officer checked his screen. 41 of our ships destroyed. Captain Yoonji's fleet took heavy losses. 8,400 ground casualties from coalition return fire that got through. Lunar Base 7 is destroyed, and the temporal dislocation field burned out 3 of its generators. We can't use it again. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. 8,000 dead. 41 ships and their crews gone. Facilities destroyed. But Earth survived. Humanity survived. Captain Yoonji, he asked. The Indomitable took damage, but she made it. She's requesting permission to recover escape pods. Both ours and theirs. Granted. We'll take coalition prisoners and treat them according to all humanitarian protocols. The battle is over. Dr. Minji approached him. She looked exhausted. The resonance array will need months to repair. The temporal field is permanently offline. Most of our orbital platforms expended their ammunition. If they send another fleet, we won't have the same advantages. They won't send another fleet, Hyunwoo said with certainty. We just destroyed their grand fleet. It'll take them years to rebuild, and by then we'll be ready again. President Ji-won appeared on the main screen. Behind her, crowds celebrated in the streets. Commander, the world wants to thank you. You saved us all. Hyunwoo shook his head. We saved ourselves, Madam President. All of us together. That's how humanity survives. The news of the Grand Fleet's destruction spread across coalition space like a disease. On 1,000 worlds, species that had lived under coalition rule for generations heard the impossible story. Earth, a single planet, had defeated 15,000 warships. The coalition, which had seemed invincible for 3,000 years, had been broken by a species most had never heard of. On the coalition capital world, Emperor Thax stood before the Council of 12. His scales had lost their glow. His voice, which usually carried absolute authority, now sounded hollow. 14,800 ships, he said slowly. Gone. The greatest military force ever assembled, destroyed in 6 hours. How did this happen? No one answered. The other emperors sat in silence. Strategic Coordinator Zenith, the artificial intelligence that had calculated a 73% chance of victory, had stopped responding to queries. Its quantum processors were attempting to understand how all its calculations had been wrong. The humans possess technology we did not anticipate, one emperor finally said. They prepared for decades specifically to defeat us. They studied our tactics and built weapons to counter them. We underestimated them. Underestimated? Thax's voice rose with rage. We sent 15,000 ships. How much estimation was needed? Before anyone could answer, reports began flooding in from across coalition space. 3 of the 12 empires were withdrawing from the council. Without the Grand Fleet to enforce unity, old rivalries were resurfacing. Border disputes that had been suppressed for centuries erupted into conflict. Species that had been conquered generations ago sensed weakness and began to revolt. The coalition was collapsing. On Earth, President Ji-won watched reports from coalition space with careful attention. The intelligence services had intercepted thousands of communications, showing the chaos spreading through their former enemies' territory. They're tearing themselves apart, her chief of staff observed. Without the Grand Fleet, they can't maintain control. Ji-won nodded. 3 empires have already sent diplomatic messages. They want peace treaties with Earth. They're trying to protect themselves from their former allies. Do we accept? The chief of staff asked. Yes, Ji-won decided. But on our terms. We negotiate from a position of strength. Earth is no longer a victim. We're a power in our own right now. Far from Earth in coalition space, Agent Taewoo completed his mission. He had spent 3 weeks infiltrating the Nexus Hub, the massive station that coordinated all coalition communications. The security had been impressive. But chaos in Coalition space had created opportunities. He stood in the central control room surrounded by technology he barely understood. His mission had been to disrupt the Nexus during the battle, but the battle was already over. Earth had won without his help. Still, he could deliver a final blow. He activated the virus he had prepared, a piece of code written by Earth's best programmers. It spread through the Nexus like wildfire, corrupting databases and scrambling communication protocols. When Coalition forces finally discovered what he had done, Tewu was already gone, escaped on a stolen ship, heading for the nearest human-friendly territory. His transmission reached Earth 3 days later. Mission accomplished. The Nexus is compromised. They'll be fixing it for months. I'm coming home. On Earth, recovery efforts continued. Captain Yunji oversaw the rescue operations, collecting escape pods from both human and Coalition ships. The surviving Coalition soldiers were taken as prisoners of war and treated well. Earth had won, but they would not become monsters in victory. Yunji stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as medical ships collected wounded from the debris field. Her own ship had taken damage, with scorch marks across the hull and several systems operating on backup power, but she was alive and most of her crew had survived. Captain, her first officer approached. We found Admiral Vorn. His escape pod was drifting near Jupiter. He's requesting to speak with Commander Hyunwoo. Yunji raised an eyebrow. The admiral who led the Grand Fleet wants to talk to us? Apparently he has information he wants to share. A warning, he says, Yunji considered. Bring him aboard. Keep him secure, but treat him with respect. He's a defeated enemy, not a criminal. Admiral Vorn was brought to a holding cell that was clean and comfortable. He was given medical treatment for minor injuries and provided with food and water. When he finally met Commander Hyunwoo via video link, his 3 eyes showed something humans rarely saw in Coalition officers. Genuine respect. Commander, Vorn said slowly, I led the greatest fleet in galactic history to your world. You destroyed it. I lost thousands of good soldiers. I lost my career, my honor, and possibly my life when I return home. But I do not hate you for it. You defended your home with skill and courage. You won fairly. Hyunwoo studied the alien admiral. Why did you want to speak with me? To give you a warning, Vorn said seriously. The Coalition is collapsing, but that does not mean you are safe. There are forces in the galaxy far more dangerous than us. The Coalition exists because we found weapons and ruins from the old war. The conflict between 2 ancient civilizations that destroyed each other. You found similar technology on your moon. This means your world was part of that war. We know, Hyunwoo replied. We've studied the ruins. Then you should know that the war did not end naturally, Vorn continued. Both civilizations were destroyed by something else, something that came from outside the galaxy. It consumed entire star systems and left nothing behind. The ancient warnings in the ruins speak of it. We never took those warnings seriously, but you should. Hyunwoo felt cold despite the warm command center. What are you saying? I'm saying your war with the Coalition may have been practice for something worse. The ancient threat might return, and when it does, you'll need allies, not enemies. The transmission ended. Hyunwoo sat in silence, processing what he had heard. Around him, his staff waited for orders. Dr. Minji, he finally said, go through the lunar base archives again. Look for anything about external threats. If there's something out there worse than the Coalition, we need to know about it. 6 months passed. Earth changed rapidly. The secret of the lunar base and the 50-year preparation was finally revealed to the public. People reacted with shock, anger, and ultimately pride. Their leaders had prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. It had saved them. Ambassador Yuna became Earth's first official representative to galactic civilization. She was a skilled diplomat who had spent years studying alien cultures. Now she stood in a newly constructed embassy on Talvos Prime, the neutral trade world where species from across the galaxy met. The embassy was small, but well defended. Human soldiers in powered armor stood guard, and hidden weapons systems protected against any threat. Earth would participate in galactic affairs, but they would never again be vulnerable. Yuna met with representatives from hundreds of species. Some came out of curiosity. Others came seeking alliance with the world that had defeated the Coalition. A few came with hostility, viewing humanity as dangerous upstarts who had upset the galactic order. To all of them, Yuna delivered the same message. Humanity seeks peace and cooperation with all species. We want to trade, share knowledge, and build relationships. But we will never submit to demands or threats. We fought for our freedom, and we will defend it against anyone who threatens it. The message was clear. Earth was open to friendship but would not tolerate aggression. 5 years after the Battle of Seoul, Commander Hyun-woo retired from active military service. He had given 40 years to protecting Earth, and now, at age 65, he decided it was time to rest. President Ji-won honored him with Earth's highest medal, and history would remember him as the commander who saved humanity. He spent his retirement in a small house with a garden, but he maintained security clearance and still consulted with military leaders. One afternoon, he received a visit from Captain Yoonji, who was now Admiral Yoonji, commander of Earth's expanding fleet. They sat in his garden drinking tea and watching the sky. Overhead, human ships could be seen moving in orbit, more than had existed before the war. Earth had not reduced its military after victory. Instead, they had grown stronger. "The fleet is ready," Yoonji reported. 30 new warships completed last month. Construction continues on the Mars shipyards. We'll have 100 ships within 2 years. "Good," Hyun-woo said. "We can never again be caught unprepared." "There's something else," Yoonji continued. "Dr. Minji found something in the lunar archives. Evidence of the external threat Admiral Vorn mentioned. The ancient civilizations called it the consuming darkness. They fought it for 1,000 years before it destroyed them." Hyun-woo set down his tea. "Is it coming back?" "We don't know. But there are signs. Deep space sensors have detected unusual readings at the edge of the galaxy, movement that doesn't match any known phenomenon. It could be natural. Or it could be something else." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Hyun-woo smiled slightly. "Let it come. We beat the coalition. We can handle whatever else the universe throws at us." Yoonji returned the smile. "That's what I told Dr. Minji. She's already working on new weapons." In her laboratory, Dr. Minji studied data from the ancient lunar base. She had spent 5 years analyzing every piece of technology, every warning, every hint the ancient civilization had left behind, and she had found something. The consuming darkness was not a species or an empire. It was something else entirely. Something that existed between dimensions, feeding on energy and matter from normal space. The ancient civilizations had developed weapons to fight it, but those weapons required massive resources and coordination between multiple species. Minji looked at her calculations and knew that if the darkness returned, Earth would need allies. They couldn't fight it alone. The coalition had been an enemy, but the remnants of their empires might become partners against a greater threat. She sent her report to President Ji-won and Admiral Yoonji. The message was clear. Earth had won one war, but a bigger challenge might be coming. In Earth's orbit, construction continued on massive defense platforms. On Mars, the first human colony was being established. In the asteroid belt, mining operations extracted resources for new ships and weapons. Across the solar system, humanity was expanding, building, preparing. Agent Tae-woo returned home to a hero's welcome. He spent months debriefing intelligence services about everything he had learned in coalition space. Then he requested a new assignment. Earth needed spies and diplomats throughout the galaxy. He volunteered to return to space to build networks and gather information. "We know so little about what's out there," he told his commanders. "There are thousands of species, hundreds of empires, countless threats and opportunities. We need to understand it all." His request was approved. Within a year, a dozen human agents were operating throughout known space, building relationships, gathering intelligence, and preparing for whatever came next. On Talvos Prime, Ambassador Yuna received a message from one of the former coalition empires. They proposed a mutual defense pact. If the ancient threat returned, humanity and the remnants of the coalition would fight together. Yuna brought the proposal to Earth's government. After long debates, they agreed. The pact was signed in a ceremony attended by representatives from 12 species. Earth had gone from a threatened, primitive world to a key player in galactic politics in just 5 years. Commander Hyun-woo attended the ceremony via video link. He watched as humans and aliens signed documents that would shape the galaxy's future. He thought about how far humanity had come, from a species that didn't know aliens existed to a power that others sought as allies. That evening, he stood in his garden and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, threats existed that could destroy entire civilizations. But Earth was ready. Humanity had proven they could fight, survive, and win against impossible odds. The Battle of Sol had ended, but Earth's story was just beginning. They had claimed their place among the stars through strength and determination, and whatever challenges came next, humanity would face them the same way they had faced the Coalition. Together, prepared and absolutely refusing to surrender.